Boeing is looking to take flight after moving on from its worst quarter performance since COVID-19 halted travel worldwide. And they're doing so with a new captain in the cockpit.
But we're clearly at a crossroads. The trust in our company is eroded. We're saddled with too much debt. We've had serious lapses in our performance across the company, which have disappointed many of our customers. But by the same token, we have great opportunities ahead.
The challenges facing the company are countless. A Boeing-made satellite that exploded in space this week exemplifies the kind of year Boeing has had. As it swallows a $6 billion quarterly loss, I want to bring in Richard Aboulafia, a top flight aviation analyst and managing director at Aerodynamic Advisory. Richard, for you, what was the most important thing that Kelly Ortberg said today?
Well, he said what had to be said, the importance of changing the culture and getting out there and restoring the links between people at the top and people who are engaged in the company's core business of designing and building planes. And it was very refreshing, frankly, to hear that, and good to hear.
Did you hear a specific plan or did you hear sentiments?
Well, here's the problem. Yeah, there was a big gap between what he said, which was exactly in line with what needs to be said, and what's been happening so far. It's still a baffler why they've gone down this path in terms of dealing with the strike. Why hasn't there been more frequent engagement with the union? Why was the last offer submitted in the way that it was? And also in the middle of it, they announced plans to literally, according to the Latin term, decimate the company by getting rid of 17,000 out of 170,000 workers at a time when you think they would need more resources to build planes rather than fewer. So there seems to be kind of a gap between stated intentions and reality so far.
He did make a comment about the culture issue at Boeing that stuck out to me. He essentially said that the culture that needs changing at Boeing came from people who are no longer with the company. Do you think that that is accurate?
It's more than accurate. It doesn't, my God, you look at the devastation inflicted on this company by, some of the previous CEOs, certainly the last CEO, Dave Calhoun, but also, Jim McNerney in the 2010s. They regarded the business of building planes as something that they kind of dragged on the back of their shoe walking out of the executive washroom. It was just not a priority. Money management was effectively the only thing that mattered to them. My real concern, you had, frankly, a close to worst in class board of all time that put up with a very bad situation for far too long. Some of them need to be swapped out very badly. And similarly, you had people in fairly senior positions at Boeing Commercial and elsewhere who also, frankly, need to be replaced. And one of the big mysteries of Kelly Ortberg's reign so far is that he hasn't parachuted in the sort of people we expected him to, people he knew from Rockwell Collins and elsewhere. It would be really good to see some new blood replacing these folks.
Did you get the hint in here in this conversation from him that he is looking to do that? He did mention external people and having that outside perspective.
Yeah, he did. So we're going to be waiting and watching and hoping because they really need some new blood. The biggest personnel change he's made so far is firing Ted Colbert from the defense side. And I actually thought Mr. Colbert was an improvement. So I was kind of baffled by that. Whereas, it's pretty clear they need some replacement people in senior positions elsewhere that haven't been dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to some of the money management. We heard a lot about how Boeing is beholden to certain defense contracts, and Ortberg said they can't really walk away from those contracts despite profitability issues. How concerning is that as they're trying to turn their financials around?
Pretty concerning, but we kind of all knew that this was the case. Back in the 2010s under McNerney, they'd had this sort of strategic decision to use ample and endless cash flow from the jetliner business to subsidize money-losing defense contracts that were fixed price. The Pentagon, of course, was happy to say, oh, you want to subsidize our weapon systems, wonderful, and give them those contracts. But now the bills are coming due. And because of inadequate resources, they are having an even harder time executing on those programs. I guess the upshot is that it places an even greater emphasis on well, restoring their only truly profitable programs, which of course are jetliners led by the 737 MAX.
He talked about, the core mission at Boeing, the commercial and the defense. Where should Boeing be trimming the fat? He did say something to the line of they're better off doing less and doing it better than doing more and not doing it well. So what needs to go at Boeing?
I was kind of baffled by that, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, they're doing a very ambitious jetliner production ramp. Cutting people from jetliner programs, not going to happen. Similarly, defense, it's those resource constraints that have made bad contracts even worse. So I can't imagine getting rid of people there. Is there enough overhead to get rid of 17,000 people? This is a company that abolished their strategy department back 6 months ago. If anything, I would be bringing on more people. Is there some fat to cut? Sure. But I just don't see where it comes from.
It sounded like he was talking specifically, if I were to go into like the corporate world, we would call them middle managers, right? From what he's hearing, the people on the ground are saying there is too much overhead. They're not able to get as much done. Is that the interpretation that you were getting from this?
I guess, but again, I have my doubts because, resources are necessary. Are some of those middle managers concerned with, quality oversight and checks on jetliner production and whatever? Some of them are, some of them aren't. This takes work. But again, the idea of getting to 17,000 redundancies, given the challenges the company is facing, I just don't know how that happens.
Does that plan still stay in effect if the strike is over and, it's more, back to business as usual at Boeing? Or do they rethink that? Because that layoff announcement came in the middle of the strike.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we're all asking ourselves that. Was it one of those, my God, we've got to prepare for a siege and outlast these guys and therefore, cut lots of jobs, or and therefore it goes away when the strike ends? Or was it a strategic and rational decision to get rid of all these jobs? I sure hope it's the first.
As far as what Boeing has taken on, are there programs that they should drop? Taking people out of it, are there just avenues that it's like, this is not the best use of our time and resources? It's distracting and we're not doing a good job.
Well, the nature of these defense contracts, you can't just walk away from them, right? You sign them, they're firm fixed price. It's an awful situation in some of them, but I think the KC-46 is up to $8 billion in losses or something, but not much you can do. Space, I'm sure if they could find a buyer, they would sell it. No question. Can they find a buyer? Maybe parts of it. Can they walk away from it? Realistically, I don't know. The answer to one thing they did just a couple of weeks ago was decide to end production of the KC-46's analog, the commercial analog, the 767 freighter after 2027. I guess that was done for good reasons, but that was the one obvious one that I would look at. Other than that, I'm not so sure what they could get rid of.
Richard Aboulafia, Managing Director of Aerodynamic Advisory. Thank you so much for your thoughts today.
My pleasure. Thank you.